how this can be done, we're talking about like digital identity. So basically today, if you want to be able to identify a product, verify a product, and any kind of like qualities, aspects around it, the best way to do this today is to create digital identities that are uniquely connected to a product, to an individual product, and basically attach to this digital identity any kind of data points that are needed for your consumer communication, for instance, about like whether it's a real or fake product, whether it's was produced under sustainable conditions, and so on and so forth. And this is what in general could be also called a real product passport. This digital identity basically is a passport of the product, and you attach, as you see on this slide, any kind of data point that is important to the customer and maybe also the consumer. So for instance, when you go from the sourcing, you could add verified information around the provenance of the raw materials. In the case of car spare parts, it could be metals that are used, rare earths, you know, any kind of cotton, for instance, for seeds or whatever. And this provenance was verified through an audit process and is reflected in an immutable way as part of like the identity of the final product. Then you can add also additional information during the manufacturing, distribution, registration process, the usage, the maintenance, if you have like spare parts that are used in a car, maybe over a longer period of time that go through certain maintenance cycles, and all the way to the second-hand market or the recycling market, where you basically return products and actually their core components into the circular product life cycle. This is what could be, for instance, for car spare parts or for the car in itself, could be a green passport for the car, where you basically list all these items that are relevant for sustainability, for proven sustainability information along this value chain. Next slide, please. I also would like to take maybe the opportunity to give a couple of examples here, and our product, My Story, is one of these examples where you substantiate claims about a product, in this case mainly in the food sector, through the use of technology. And My Story is one of these products that we have put out there and are actually already in operation with a number of clients. And I'll give you one example on the next slide, and this is wine. Basically, where you promote absolute transparency around the way how wine is manufactured. So for instance, when you are producing wine that is from a specific area, that gets basically reflected as part of like all the way down to the area where the wine grapes have been grown. The harvesting process will be reflected as part of like a concrete auditing process and digitally reflected, all the way to the point where the product is bottled and made available for sale. And you can check all this information in an immutable way, meaning like the information is reflected in a blockchain solution, where you basically cannot, once the information is reflected, you cannot tamper with that information anymore. And this information is then available for consumers to check not only the validity of the information, but ultimately also the authenticity of the product, in this case, a bottle of wine. Next slide, please. Another, I think, very exciting project that DNV has been accompanying and expanding on is the ocean cleanup. As some of you might know, this is an initiative that aims at collecting ocean plastic, basically plastic that was finding its way into the oceans as pollutant. And we all know in the Pacific, for instance, but also in other places in Southeast Asia, this has been agglomerating there quite a bit and causes all kinds of issues, and obviously also like potential health problems in the population when you don't address the issue. So the ocean cleanup is there to basically ridding the oceans and waterways of plastic and creating basically a platform to actually offset the pollution, reduce the pollution through the investment opportunity from individuals as well as companies. So next slide, please. So basically what we have been doing together with the ocean cleanup is basically giving that level of transparency and assurance that this plastic that is, for instance, used in certain new products, so that this ocean plastic will be recycled and turn into new products. And we basically have developed a standard that certifies the origin and the authenticity of ocean plastic in these new products. And this is basically done through a mix of traditional audit techniques. That means like on-site inspections. And this is also combined with digital audit techniques, like basically using all kinds of technical tools, starting with normal smartphones for fishermen that collects a certain amount of ocean plastic. This ocean plastic gets verified through the use of GPS, its location, where it's coming from. Maybe in some cases, AI will require artificial intelligence, basically algorithm will require taking a picture of the plastic just to verify, just to give you a couple of examples. And then basically this plastic is collected, weighed, and turned over to the recycling process. And last but not least, and I think this is quite exciting, we have the opportunity to offer the ability of individuals and also companies to offset potential pollution through the buying of tokens that are reflective of a certain amount of ocean plastic that is being collected, and thereby you can either contribute or preempt any potential pollution that might be caused by anyone, and reduce actually the pollutants in the ocean through this platform. Next slide. These are a couple other typical examples where we provide digital assurance towards consumers. One area, without naming the clients, we have been working on making the supply chain of beef for a client fully transparent. So it's possible to authenticate the provenance of meat, high quality and also high value meat towards consumers. So it's possible to verify not only the origin of the meat, but also whether that meat is in fact the meat that you want to buy, meaning like, is it authentic or not? And this is done also again like through the use of a QR code that is applied on the outer packaging during the packaging, which is tied to the production batch of the meat, and has all the relevant information of the chain of custody as well as the provenance, and also potentially then, this is the next step, of any sustainability components to it attached to it. Cold chain logistics, it's pretty much the same thing, or a similar thing. In this case, it's about a seafood producer. We basically log, and in an also immutable way, log the chain of custody, the cold chain of custody of the seafood product. So meaning like also proving that the cold chain was not broken, and therefore the product has the quality that it's intended to be. And last but not least, you see here on the right-hand side a use case about a circular product. So where basically it's a global apparel manufacturer, and the garments produced are or with which the garment, the new garment is produced, or the new apparel is being produced, contains a certain amount of like reused materials, and this will be assessed, audited, and then reflected also for consumer communication in the context of sustainability for consumers. So this is a little bit a set of examples I wanted to give you where digital assurance can play a role, but this is of course only a snapshot. There are many, many other areas of engagement possible. With that having said, we go to the next slide. Okay, perfect. Now I hand over to Richard, who will talk about mobile and product and document authentication.
Yes, thank you very much, Florian. Also, thanks for these exciting examples and projects, really right in the current trend, I would say. And was also good to see the wider context of the digital assurance and track and trace environment. Now, I would like to narrow these topics a little bit down when it comes to real concrete authentication, mobile authentication, because our solution is based on smartphones and it's usable for any kind of product, packaging, or documents. Next slide, please. All right, so we can already see here that the vision of Authentic Vision actually is to build and provide a secure bridge which is connecting the physical and digital worlds. So, of course, there is a lot of opportunity to provide security in the digital world with cryptography, with blockchain, etc. But our focus here is also how do we transfer this security into the physical world? Meaning, if I hold a product in my hands right now, if I hold a document in my hands right now, how can I really be sure this is authentic and this is the real one? Next slide, please. So how does the technology of Authentic Vision look like? What is the bridge between the two worlds about? If you look at the left side here, this shows a typical security label, but the most important part of it is actually in the middle of that security label. It's our security feature, which consists of two elements. It's at the same time a holographic fingerprint structure in the form of a shield and a data matrix code, which could also be a QR code. So this combination is at first sight not really special. Holograms have been around for quite a while. Data matrix codes have been around and can obviously be copied or cloned. But now the revolutionary thing about our technology, I would say, really is, first of all, that the holographic structure is unique. It comes from a random production process. So even we ourselves as the manufacturer couldn't do two same features of a kind. And the second and more important characteristic is that it's really possible to automatically authenticate this feature with a smartphone. So no human interaction, no judgment with visual elements, to look at visual elements, is this authentic or not, is required. The free smartphone app will actually do the job and say objectively, this is a real authentic product or not. Next slide, please. So, of course, there are a couple of technologies which are also trying to link physical and digital worlds. It's just important to mention, maybe at this point, that there are a couple of clear differences as well. QR codes or data matrix codes, they provide serialization. They are very good as a basis for track and trace systems. They also contribute somehow to keep the supply chain clean and notice counterfeiting activity. But when it comes to authenticating one piece, then it has to be mentioned that they can be copied or cloned, while the Authentic Vision feature is unique. Classic holograms, also hard to copy, but at the same time, there are many manufacturers worldwide able to provide holograms. And also, it is important to know that there is room for irritations and misunderstandings as long as the authentication process is done by the human factor. So the automatic result provided by Authentic Vision is immediate and clear. There are also other authentication technologies, for example, based on microprints. where it's not sure that they would work with all kinds of mobile phones. For example, they need a certain camera resolution, or might also be possible to be replicated in a high resolution process, which is not possible for the 3D holographic fingerprint. NFC tags, of course, also provide a link between the physical and digital world. However, on the downside, it is to mention that they might be quite costly, and of course, in metal or liquid environment, have some limitations. So these technologies are well established and have their value and benefits, certainly, but we feel that with the Authentic Vision fingerprint, we can really overcome some of the downsides and provide additional benefits. Next slide, please. So how does the authentication process actually look like? The system contains 3 elements, starting at the left with the secure tagging. So the security tag, as mentioned before, can go on a product directly or on a packaging, as you see here. Or it could be a document as well, like a product passport, which Florian had mentioned before. So of course, the security seal would be tamper evident, so there is no room for manipulation or transferring of this feature to another location. Then the authentication takes place with a simple scan where any smartphone can be used, be it Android or be it iOS. The app is available in any app store, also in Asian web stores locally. And obviously, no additional hardware is required. Almost everyone is in possession of a smartphone, and also no special training is required because the process of scanning is very easy and self-explaining. Then we provide a third element, which is headlined here with smart data. Of course, every scanning process creates a data set in our database. Geolocation, timestamp, gray market activities can be recorded and analyzed. So what's going on in the market can actually be monitored actively, similar to a track and trace system in a smaller scale. Next slide, please. Also interesting to mention that the scanning and authentication process offers additional opportunities for customer communication. When the scanning takes place, which is usually within 1 second, a little longer than just a QR code scan or data matrix scan, because of course the 3D image is analyzed for authentication. After showing the authentication result, which is hopefully positive, an authentic product, the user or the customer will be directed to a landing page, which then creates for the brand owner various opportunities for additional communication for customer engagement. As you could imagine with a QR code, the customer would be directed to a landing page. However, the difference here is that only an authentic scan will lead to the content behind the gate. That's why we call it a gated experience. So if this would be loyalty points or valuable product information, maybe augmented reality contents, this is not for anyone. It cannot be cloned, it cannot be forwarded. Only the person who has the authentic product in his hands can get the benefits of this additional information. Next slide, please. Maybe also interesting to understand that the app comes with several options. At the left side, there's the Check If Real app, which is freely available for everyone in every app store, for Apple and Android. So pretty easy to use, self-explaining. Then in the middle, we have the branded authentication app, which is basically exactly the same functionality, just with the branding of the brand owner, look and feel, for additional brand value. But most interesting, I guess, for most use cases is at the right side, what we call the integrated authentication app. It's basically an SDK, a software development kit, which acts as a plug-in for existing apps. So if a brand already has distributed their app to their consumers, consumers are familiar with the app, the functionality of authentication can simply be integrated into such an existing app. Next slide, please. So another few words for the third pillar of the system, which is the smart web portal. Of course, there are various ways to analyze all the data which is collected in the marketplace during the scans. This has benefits to fight fraud. This has benefits when it comes to controlling channels in with regards to gray market, etc. And actually, it also allows to dynamically change the consumer communication content, meaning if a security tag or if the product is already in the market, we still can adapt the landing page the consumer is directed after scan. This is a live system and we have full access in real time. Maybe also interesting if we're looking at the left side of the picture here when it comes to anti-fraud. If you imagine a counterfeiter would try to counterfeit such a security seal, first thing they would do is go use the app and try to get an authentic result. So far, they don't manage. It's really a pretty secure system, but we have an additional advantage of having an early warning system. We see exactly where counterfeiting activity takes place. We get the geolocation, and as the app will provide photos, we even can see the quality of the counterfeits. So this is an early warning system providing additional security, which we are, of course, glad to share with our customers. Next slide, please. Now, this slide is actually bringing together the two worlds, so to say, of DNVGL and Authentic Vision. So DNVGL providing the track and trace system, the overall system, and systems like My Story. These can work together, complementary. So meaning a track and trace system is in place by DNVGL, certification system, product passport system, and these two systems can be related. So when it comes to actually authenticate physical product, then the Authentic Vision part of the solution will create additional benefits for the overall track and trace system. At Authentic Vision side, we're really glad that we have found customers in various industries. The selections shown here are just related to the industrial environment, starting with Danfoss, which is using the authentication systems for their power solutions parts. ATQ is a German auto part brand in the aftermarket. Elsewedy is an Egyptian leading manufacturer of cables and accessories for the building construction industry. Cantal with heating wires in the automotive industry from Scandinavia as part of a Sandvik group. Or you will also recognize HDMI, of course, as the brand consortium of the high quality audio cables, which are using the system not only for authentication, but also for license control, meaning to avoid overproduction of licensed merchandise. This is basically it. And of course, I'm very, very happy that we have DNVGL as a partner bringing even more of a global landscape with their size and organization. So thank you also, Florian, for joining us. And now I hand over back to Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Florian. I think there was an extremely interesting and relevant discussion. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and insights. And also many thanks to all the participants for joining us today, for your time and for your interest in this subject, which is quite exciting. As mentioned in the beginning, if you have any question that you did not raise during the webinar, please feel free to get in touch with us. We will respond to all your questions or inquiries. And yeah, we hope to see you again in one of our webinars. And for now, goodbye.